Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the Python portion of problem number 2 in preparation for you being able to create the Python portion of problem number 3 in chapter 1. First order of business is to launch Python. And the way that I do that is I go into, if it's on an Apple computer, I'll go into the applications and I'll find the Python logo. And I will click on it. If it's Windows, of course, you'll go down to Programs, and you'll click on a application that's called IDLE, I-D-L-E. Okay, and it launched it. So I'll move the window that it just launched up here so you can see it. And since I'm here, let's go ahead and tinker around with Python just a little bit. All right. This here is basically a line-by-line interpreter, the way that this thing is sitting right now. It's called a shell because that's the terminology that they use for programs that are running within an operating system. Okay, so what exactly will this do for me? Well, there is no real declaration command, to declare a variable as a particular type in Python, which is similar to Raptor. So what we do is we just simply assign the variable and Python figures it out. For example, if I say x is equal to 10, just like so. Now I type in the letter X and it comes back and it says, hey, it's 10. It doesn't tell me if it's an integer or a float or anything like that. So let's see if Python knows. And the way that we do that is we just simply enter type, open parenthesis, and the variable name like so. And I hit enter and it comes back and it says, aha, this is an integer. Okay, that's pretty cool. So let's do this. I'm going to go input. Actually, X is equal to input. Give it to me, babe. Close quote, close parenthesis, hit enter, gives me the prompt, give it to me, babe. And this time I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in, say, 30. Hit enter, and now I'll type in X. Sure enough, it's saying 30, but you'll notice that now it put little single quote marks around 30. That's telling me that 30 is a string. Well, I don't want it to be a string. Python thinks it's a string. Okay, I'm kind of dead in the water for being able to calculate, right? Well, the solution to that is to tell Python, look, I understand that you gave me a string, but I really would like you to run it through something that would turn this into a floating point number. This is called casting. And in Python, that's really easy to do. All you have to do is tell it what type you want and then cast it. Well, you'll see how it works. This is the easiest way. Float. F-L-O-A-T, that's the type that I want. Open parenthesis, X, close parenthesis, just like so. And let's just see what that does. Enter, and it comes back and it says that the floating point value of X is 30. Did it change X? Well, let's see if it did. It sure didn't, so let's change it. X is equal to float X, like so. And now when I type in X, it tells me that it's a floating point number. This is kind of an important thing to know. And that is that Python keeps very close track of what's going on with respect to typing. Okay? So that means that we could have a little bit of trouble when we're writing our programs as we try to mix and match types as the program runs, which we're going to see right now. So we can do things one line at a time, as you can see. But what happens, or what do we do, if we want to run or create an actual program? Well, we're going to have to open up a new window. And if we go up to File, it comes down here and says New File. On earlier versions of Python, I believe that says New Window, which is pretty much the same thing as Python's concerned. So I'll go New File, and it opens up a window to hold that file. There it is. It's all ready to go for me. And I think what I'm going to do, since it's untitled, I'm going to title this thing. All right. So I'll do a File, Save As, and it wants to know the name of the file. So I will go ahead and let's see. I'll call it. Make sure that's on. Will this work? Can I paste the name in there? Sure enough, there's the name. Interesting that it's forcing me to actually paste it as opposed to doing a Control V, but that's all right. I don't care. Where do I want this thing to be stored at? I'll come down to my directory where I'm storing IS-115 stuff, and let's see if I created a work folder. I did. Okay, so we'll go in here like so, and I will save it there. Pick Save, and now as you see, the name is changed to reflect this. Alright, what I did to make life easier for me is I created a little template. And the template has only text in it. It's a .text file. And I can copy from that template, and if I come over here and do a paste, what it does is it creates a whole bunch of comments for me in Python. The way that we know what a comment is in Python is by virtue of the little pound symbol in the front. Anything that has a pound symbol on the first line, Python considers as a comment and something that can be ignored as far as executing the program. So I put down the file name, what this program actually does, the author, the revision, and the date. I also created a region for input, for processing, and output. So my input is going to be literally price equals input and some prompt, right? And that prompt might be enter the price of the meal. I think that's what I wrote before when I was playing with Raptor. I'm not sure. That looks pretty good. And then the next thing that I need to do is the processing, which is to calculate the tip, right? So tip is going to be equal to, let's go 0.15 times the price. I'm going to now implement a little convention, and that is if I've done any kind of programming, I like to just kind of do intermediary runs on the program to see if it will run as far, as this. If I write the entire program and then run it, it could crash so bad that I would never figure out where it went wrong. So if I just do a little bit at a time and then run it whenever the opportunity presents itself, then I can figure out exactly where the problem lies. So if I come up here to run, source must be saved. I'll say save. Enter the price of the meal. This is good news, right? So I'll just say $100. Hit enter, and it came back and bled all over the screen. Look at that. It said the file name. This is what I'm working on, and it told me the line that I'm having the problem with, line 12. It says a tip is equal to this, and then it came back with a message, type error. Can't multiply sequence by non-int of type flow. In other words, I have here this float, I have this here, it's a non-integer. It can't multiply it together, because if you're going to multiply two numbers together like this, they have to be similar types. Alright, so what's the problem here? Why isn't this working? Well, as you recall, when I came back and I played the input game over here, it told me that it was a string. So I have to force this to be a float. And the way that I do that is I just go float, open parentheses, close parentheses. I am now taking all of the stuff that gets returned by the input command, and I'm casting it as a float. And let's see if it will run now. Okay, run the module. Of course, it's asking me to save it, and I'll type in the number 100, and there were no crashes. Of course, I don't have any output, but that's alright. So let's go ahead and get the output thing fixed. Print open parenthesis, the price is, close quote, put in a concatenation symbol, which is a plus sign, and I'll say price, right? Like so. And then I'm going to go print, open parenthesis, quote, the tip is, close quote, plus tip. Like so. And now let's run it and see what it does. Do a save, run the module, put in $100 because that's easy to work with in my head, hit enter, and it crashed again. Okay, so we come down here and it crashed on the line, the price is price, right? And it came back again with a type error. So it says I can't convert float object to string implicitly. It needs this to be string. So one way of doing this is you can just go str, making sure that you cast it as a string, because that's exactly what's happening. And if it didn't work here, I probably should do it down here as well. So I'll go str, like so, and finish the parenthesis business, and let's go ahead and run it and save it because it wants me to save it. 100, hit enter, and it comes back and it gives me the correct values. Okay, this is a pretty interesting deal. Number one, it didn't give me decimal point formatting very nice. Okay, but it did bring up an issue in Python of the importance of casting your data. Now, another way of handling this situation is I can go price str for string. Okay, price string is equal to, get rid of that, and then on the next line I can go price is equal to float, price string, and then down here I can just say price string, right? Because it never changed, because remember, this is a string that's up here, and down in the processing I can include a line called tip str is equal to string tip, like so. So now in this spot I can replace that with tip str. You'll notice the uppercase and the uppercase S right there in these two places. This is called camel case when we're naming variables. And I went ahead and included str so I can kind of understand or keep track of what the variable types are of these critters. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this thing. Save it. Put in my $100. And now I've got that. Okay, now let me show you one more cool little trick in Python, and that has to do with what's called formatted output. So come down here, I can also say print open parenthesis, the price is, and then I'm going to use a %sign, and since it's a floating point number, if I go 0.2, I'm saying make it to the nearest 100th. In other words, I'm telling it to give me 2 zeros past the decimal point. F for float, and then do a space, and the tip is, again, I'll say %0.2, like so, F, and now I need to find some way to get that information into my print statement, and I've made a blunder, so let's go over here and put our quote mark in there like we're supposed to, right? Put in another quote mark. I am going to use the % symbol again, but this time this is a message to Python that data is coming, and since it's two pieces of data, I'm going to put them both in parentheses, and the first one is going to be my floating point price, PRICE, like so, comma, tip, TIP. Now you'll see what has happened here is I was allowed to use the actual floating point values, I think. All right, let's see if it runs. So we'll save it, run the module, price of the meal, 100, hit enter, and it comes back and says 115, and of course, as you see, there's no nice decimal points, decimal point controls. Okay, here it is, the price is 100 and the tip is 15. So of course I can have fun with that by putting little $ symbols or whatever in front. All right, this is known as formatted output, and it makes it very, very nice in terms of creating a nice clean output. Anything other than that, though, you will have to do some typecasting or manage variables to keep track of which ones are strings and which ones are not, or whatever. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing. Hopefully you'll be able to replicate what I did, and it'll lay the groundwork down for you to be able to complete problem number 3 in chapter 1.